Hey, y'all. I hope you are having a great day. Whenever you're listening to this, whether it's morning, noon, or night, may you enjoy today. Today, we're talking about everything that pertains to basketball in the bubble with Julieann Challacombe. Sit back, grab your popcorn, and enjoy today's conversation. As always, cheers. I'm here with Julieann Challacombe, known Lakers fan and also known NBA fan. How are you doing today, Julieann?
I'm doing great. I've been excited with all the crazy action going on inside the NBA, and I'm excited to talk about it with you.
Yeah. Um, speaking of you being a Lakers fan, they played again last night. And guys, I know it sounds like I'm just harping on LA at this point because we've had back-to-back podcasts talking about how bad they've looked. But last night, it was an interesting look. It was one of the few LA games without LeBron this season. And their offense looked like it was a car stuck in quicksand that had no engine or no wheels. What did you make of last night's game against the Rockets?
Um, Last night's game against the Rockets, it was a hot mess, and I honestly didn't originally think that the Lakers would play that bad without LeBron because of how well AD's been doing, but I was definitely proven wrong. Um, James is definitely needed, and there's just been too many inconsistencies.
Right. I think an interesting thing that I saw last night, Kyle Kuzma ended up leading the Lakers with 21 points. AD only had 17 points in 30 minutes. Now, I wonder your opinion on this. Could it be that maybe the Lakers are sort of coasting now that they've clinched the number one seed? Or could it be that, are they just not trying as hard? What's going on with the Lakers? I mean, we see the Clippers giving great efforts night in and night out. And we saw the Clippers Dallas game yesterday was a great game. And so I wonder what seems to be going on with this Lakers team specifically. And it gives me shades of what's going on with Milwaukee, where there's just so many offensive inconsistencies. And granted, the Lakers, like you said, did not have LeBron last night, but still a championship team should look better than they did.
I think that they played so well this year, and I think that's part of it might be them coasting now that they've made the playoffs. But I
Mm-hmm.
really think, in my opinion, the Lakers still need to rebuild. Um, they have their star players, Anthony Davis and LeBron James. And other than that, they have just other inconsistent players in
Right.
Kuzma. He'll drop 25 and 10 one night, and then he'll go three straight games dropping less than 10 points.
Right.
And I don't think J.R. Smith has been able to do what they thought that he could with this team.
Exactly.
Um, and Jared Dudley, like I don't think they.
um, the fact that Jared Dudley even came up on this podcast, not to hate on Jared Dudley, he's a good NBA player, but he's just one of those guys where I don't know if he can be in your rotation on a championship team. And with the Lakers, we saw Tyler Horton Tucker get some minutes, who's a Lakers rookie. We saw last night was really just felt like a mess. Danny Green still unable to hit open shots. And I'm starting to wonder what is going on there. It seems that there's trouble in paradise. Maybe it's this new situation. Maybe it's a bubble. I touched on a podcast earlier this week saying that LeBron likes to play up to the crowds, and with no crowd there, what's getting LeBron going in year 17 or year 18, whatever year it is at this point? What's getting LeBron going in these 8 seeding games if there's no playoffs on the line and there's no crowd there to play for?
I think you're exactly right, and I think that this Lakers team has become a little bit too comfortable inside the bubble.
Mm.
Um, they are
You say
number
they're
one in the
golfing too
West.
much?
Do what?
You say they're golfing too much?
Honestly, honestly, they're out there in Orlando just chilling.
Right. I thought it was interesting last night, granted, James Harden is one of the best offensive players I've ever seen in my life, but the Lakers struggled mightily to contain him late in that game. Whether it was passing, scoring, just pushing the ball in transition, there was no real answer for James Harden. And that's been one of my questions all season with this Lakers team is who is their wing defender that can guard these bigger guards and wing players that are great offensive talents and kind of slow them down. When you look at the blueprint for every championship contender, there is an elite wing defender. And I don't see it in Kentavious Caldwell Pope. I don't see it in J.R. Smith or Dion Waiters. LeBron, we know LeBron likes to play defense in bursts. He won't play defense the entire game, but likes to play it on the last possession, stuff like that. And the Lakers this season, they've been unbalanced and they don't really have that perimeter defender that can help slow down these superstars in a 7-game series. And I kind of wanted to know your opinion on that.
I think that the answer lies in the two players that the Lakers have been relying on this whole time, Anthony Davis and LeBron James. I think that LeBron James would have been able to contain him to a certain extent last night, but and it's just really hard to guard Harden, and Davis needs to take care of defending the 4s and 5s, so you kind of have to find someone else to do that. And I agree. I'm not really seeing anyone. I've always thought that Kuzma was kind of an okay defender. He's pretty quick on his feet. He's very aware of the court. But just when it comes to Harden, it's so hard to guard someone.
I don't think anybody can necessarily guard Harden. I think you can definitely make his life a bit
that
more
can shoot. I think he just moves so quickly on the floor, and yeah.
Right. And Harden is just one of those guys where you kind of pick your poison. He's either going to get to the foul line a million times a game, or he's going to, hit a whole bunch of step back threes on you. And
yeah.
I'd like to, in a 7-game series, though, the Lakers need somebody that can slow any perimeter score down to a degree. And they don't have that. And maybe that goes back to the unbalancedness of their team, maybe, and that they've just relied on their two guys the entire season, that they haven't really worked into building a team around those two guys that kind of picks up where those guys aren't able to do everything. But enough with the Lakers. We have to touch on your boy Zion and the Pelicans and what's going on with Zion. I mean, you have to admit you're a known Duke fanatic. You love Coach K. You love what Duke stands for. You have family ties there. Now, what is going on with Zion? He looked more athletic, more in shape, more quick, more bouncy in college. And then he gets to the NBA not even a full calendar year later, and he looks like a completely different player at 20 years old. It's like he's lumbering to even bring his body down the court. I mean, you watched every Zion minute when he was at Duke versus now, and I think you can even say that he looks like a completely different level of athlete and a worse level of athlete than what he used to be. So from what you see, what's going on with Zion?
I think that there are many factors going into my answer. One, I think quarantine got to him a little bit. I think that
gumbo in New Orleans.
Yeah, I think that he kind of not let himself go, but got a little bit too comfortable. I think that I was talking to Evan about this actually yesterday, about how people attach Duke University, I think, sometimes to the caliber of the NBA just because of how big of a name Duke University is, how much history they have in the NCAA with great players. And I think if people don't see players like Zion who did unprecedented things in the NCAA at Duke, I think they think a lot of people in the NBA think that if they go into the NBA from playing like that and they're not immediately just golden, like playing like LeBron or KD or Giannis. I just feel like they discredit kind of how they play and what they do. Like Brandon Ingram, it kind of took him 3 years to really find his stride in the NBA. Grayson Allen, he's been really helpful for the
He's one of
Grizzlies,
those
but
guys that have been really that have blossomed in the bubble lately.
exactly, he's been from team to team, and he's finally found a home with the Grizzlies, and he's doing well. Frank Jackson, he's not doing too bad for the Pelicans either lately, and I think that if you put that on top of how insane Zion was, I think he can definitely handle the caliber of the NBA, but he's still working on it. He's only 19 years old. Lots of pressure was put on him, and
It's
he
because of
battled that.
unwarranted pressure, though. Especially with how well he played in his return after he tore his meniscus and then came back in January. And the guy, you can't blame people for getting hyped. His first game, he hit like 4 threes or something like that. And then he followed that up, averaging like 24 points per game on almost 60% from the field with 8 rebounds. But in the NBA, we haven't seen him be the caliber of level of defender that he was at Duke. We haven't seen him being willing to make those effort plays that he was known for. The diving on the floor, the chasing down loose rebounds, the running hard in transition. It's like he doesn't seem to care as much anymore. And
Actually, I have to agree with you on that. I've noticed that when he's on the floor and the ball transitions, he's just kind of the last one to follow.
I know. And it makes me wonder, is there something going on that, we just as spectators and fans of the sport don't know? Is there something we're not privy to, since we're not New Orleans insiders, that maybe the New Orleans medical staff is telling him some stuff, and maybe he's not fully recovered from his knee surgery still? And that would be the most worrying thing, is that if it's taken this long. He had 4 months off due to the NBA hiatus, and he still came back out of shape. You'd think that in those 4 months when you're not playing basketball, we've seen other guys around the league come back in better shape than where they left off at. And you think a 19-year-old who's hungry and wants to be a championship caliber player, you think that he'd be one of the guys working, not a 35-year-old Chris Paul, And
Yeah.
Chris Paul could have easily just rested on his loins, but that's not how that guy's wired. And I'm starting to, and granted, it's a small sample size, and I will say that again, but I'm starting to feel that maybe Zion's not at that point in his career where for him it's championship or bust mentality. We've seen guys come into the league with that type of mentality. We think about, the Kobe's, the LeBrons, the Kevin Garnett's, the Tim Duncans of the world, that they just come into the league with this sense of maturity when they approach their craft. And when you hear Zion talk, he talks like a 19-year-old kid, that loves playing basketball, that's great that he loves playing basketball, but he's not at that point where he is willing to 100% outwork somebody to that crazy level that we see LeBron spend millions on his body every year. We see Chris Paul hire a vegan chef, and we saw Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, was one of the most psychotic people when it came to his basketball work ethic. And so, I get that that's a high standard to hold Zion to, especially after he's only played like 20 some NBA games. But it's a learning process, yes, but the Pelicans also have veterans like JJ Redick, you'd think, that are instilling that level of work ethic, because JJ is known as one of the hardest workers in the NBA. And so my question is just that, like, it does not make sense. There seems to be a disconnect for me with Zion's approach to managing his body versus what we saw at Duke. I mean, this guy at Duke was transcendent, and it was almost like you could directly see how his game would fit in the NBA. And an interesting thing that I've noted and noticed is how with Charles Barkley and Zion had kind of similar career trajectories in terms of when Charles Barkley came into the league, he was 280 pounds. And he was a big boy, thickums. and so then Charles Barkley was like, I got to lose weight if I want to stay in the league. And it took Charles losing weight that then propelled him to be a Hall of Famer, especially once he got to Phoenix, where he was playing the best basketball of his career. And I'm not one to, comment on people's bodies or anything, but when you're an athlete, managing your body is your job. And that's one thing that I'm not asking Zion to get down to 190 pounds. That would not make sense. His body type can't get down to that weight. But what I am thinking about is how can Zion lower his weight to lower the impact on his knees, and maybe his ideal playing weight is somewhere between 240 and 260, and not like 280 something. And I think that would help a lot because he looks bigger than he did at Duke. Dude is massive now, and so there's no way around it. He's built like a house.
Built like a tree for sure.
Do you think it has something to do with his body and as much weight as he gained in the NBA?
I think it definitely has something to do with that. I remember before he started the summer league, there was an article that said he gained about 10 to 15 pounds of muscle weight. No matter what, it's still 10 to 15 pounds you have to carry around, you have to run around with on the floor. And I think that maybe they presumed that it would do him good. It would, make him be able to break the defense fat quicker or, dunk harder. But I think that it's just proved that lean because it just seems like he doesn't enjoy carrying around this extra weight. And as a player, he just needs to hop on the treadmill.
On the treadmill.
I think it was, just kind of like we want Zion bigger, we want him better, we want him to look amazing and unreal, but I think they just might have to accept that he does need to lose some weight so he can be quicker on the floor. He can return back to diving for loose balls like he used to at Duke, because I agree he was a lot more agile when he was at Duke.
And that's what made him so intriguing. He was this combination of power and finesse, and that he was so strong, but he also seemed to float and defy gravity in air. And in the NBA, it looks more like, one of those big seagulls that can like barely fly sometimes because they're so huge. And I wonder, I'm like, at what point can we say that, like, Zion, you need to do something other than what you've been doing? Because it looks like he's ladening and lumbering, and it looks like it hurts him to run. And what I've realized is any guy that you can tell by the way they run, guys like, Greg Oden or Sam Bowie, these guys that they look like they're laboring to run, it's a bad sign. Their careers tend to not last long when it looks like it's hurting you just to move around. And my fear is that Zion is so good. The NBA needs Zion in terms of storylines, but if his career is cut short because he is carrying so much weight on his frame, that what good is that, And I would hate to see a guy that's worked his entire life to get to the league have his career cut short, or him not even reach his full potential because his playing weight is 295 and he's 6'6".
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's I also think that it's just a terrible thing for his bad knee.
That
because
believe me, I had the same surgery Zion had, and when you don't attack your rehab in terms of strengthening the muscles around the knee and all, it hurts. It hurts, and there are even days to this point. I mean, I had that surgery like a year and a half ago. It's to this point where like some days my knee just hurts and it aches, and so I can't imagine going out there to play 40 NBA minutes and on a back to back, especially at a playing weight that's as heavy as a Boban who is 7'4" or 7'5". I mean, it makes no sense. And so maybe that's why the Pelicans have been limiting his minutes, is that they want to see him start to lose some of that weight. Like you said, 10 to 15 pounds of muscle gained is still 10 to 15 pounds you have to carry around. And so maybe that's what's been going on, but it's been so concerning for me just as a basketball fan, and probably for you too, as not only a basketball fan but a Zion fan. It's like this guy is supposed to be the guy that takes the mantle, and then he looks like, it'd be a struggle for him to get up and walk to the mantle in the first place. and so, but let's flip the script a little bit and talk about the Milwaukee Bucks and how they've been very inconsistent. We saw them have a comeback win against the Heat yesterday, but the game before that, we saw them lose to the Brooklyn Nets. What do you make of this Bucks team?
I think that very similarly to the Lakers, they just rely on Giannis and sometimes Middleton to just carry the team, and they don't really have, the guys that play outstanding defense and stuff to back that crazy offense up. And I think that they need to do a little bit of rebuilding as well.
To this day, I can't figure out why they let go of Brogdon last offseason. He went from being one of the few guards they could play down the stretch in the Eastern Conference Finals to then you just let him go as a restricted free agent to the Pacers. The fact that they chose Eric Bledsoe over Malcolm Brogdon, and Bledsoe struggled in that Eastern Conference Finals series. I mean, the pressure that is on the Milwaukee Bucks right now is immense. We can't deny that. They have Giannis is going to be a free agent in about a year and a half or so. And if they can't make the finals here when they have the highest winning percentage of any regular season team ever, they have the highest margin of victory in terms of how much they beat their teams, like 11. It's like 11 points per game or something. And often Giannis hasn't even played in the fourth quarters because the Bucks have been smacking teams. And then things are so much different now in the bubble. And I wonder how much of that is going into Giannis. Is Giannis taking mental notes of that? He's been linked to several rumors about the Miami Heat and other teams. New York somehow finds him supposed, and that it baffles my mind that people still think that the Knicks are going to get a good free agent ever, but they've put themselves in the mix. And so there's all this pressure on Milwaukee to make it out of the East. Now, with the way they've been playing now, with how good Toronto has been, I get it's a small sample size. And yes, the Bucks have Brook Lopez, who's been a great defender this season and has been a floor spacer for Giannis. But so much of that team revolves around Giannis being a supernova, ultra red, violet, gamma superstar. And then when he's off the floor, it's a different team. The off-court and on-court numbers for Giannis have been severely different in the bubble than they were in the regular season. In the regular season, they could hold up for most times when Giannis wasn't on the floor because Giannis playing built them such a big lead. But now, when things are evened out, they don't have home court advantage in the playoffs. How do you see this Bucks team beating a Toronto team that's surging with a top 10 point guard in Kyle Lowry, with Pascal Siakam, who has just gotten better this year? The on-court, off-court numbers for Marc Gasol are amazing. How can you rationalize Milwaukee beating Toronto in a 7-game?
I really don't see it happening. honestly. I really like the Toronto team this year that they have. And in my opinion, I think that they're gonna go to at least the semifinals and maybe the finals again. I mean, they're just they're too good. You know, they're number one in the oh no, they're number two in the East. The Bucks the Bucks, since just being in the bubble, you know, I think that it's kind of affecting them, the atmosphere. And I think you're right. I think that the crowd difference for the Bucks just is really affecting them. I think the environment is just affecting them a little bit. And, you know, it's always just Giannis, Giannis, Giannis. And
in a 7-game series, what's going to happen? We saw it happen last season where Toronto just built a wall to stop Giannis from getting to the rim. And since his jumper's so inconsistent, the Milwaukee offense struggled. And I mean, this is an offense that's predicated on getting Giannis out in transition, getting Giannis around the basket. And this is another thing that isn't talked about as much is Giannis is not a great free throw shooter. When you are a slasher, when you are a guy that predicates on contact and finishing through contact, you have to be a great free throw shooter. We've seen it become LeBron's kryptonite, and I'm scared that it's going to be the same story for Giannis. When you're a 60% free throw shooter, teams, and you're the star player, the ball's going to be in your hands down the stretch. And if you're afraid to go to the line, and if you're afraid to hit those big free throws, and if you lack the ability to hit those big free throws, your team's going to suffer. So I wonder what is going to happen with Milwaukee when in a 7-game series, teams stop those transition opportunities for Giannis. Teams build a wall with 3 or 4 defenders shading over. And they basically say, like, we'll let Chris Middleton and George Hill and Eric Bledsoe beat us. And I think that Milwaukee lacks that secondary superstar shot creator. Chris Middleton's an all-star, yes, but when you look at other big twos around the league, for instance, in Miami, you got Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo. Bam Adebayo is a sensational playmaker. Jimmy Butler is a sensational shot creator. And then let's go to the Western Conference. We've already talked LeBron, AD. Then you have the other LA team, Paul George and Kawhi. And then, you know, these big two, freaking in Denver, Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Hopefully Jamal Murray can get healthy. I'd love to see that. Houston, James Harden and Russell Westbrook. Philadelphia, Ben Simmons is hurt now, so I guess that doesn't really count. I wonder what's going to happen with Philadelphia. But in Toronto, like Kyle Lowry and Pascal Siakam. And then if those two aren't necessarily firing on all cylinders, you have Marc Gasol. And so with Milwaukee, Giannis and Chris Middleton, but I'd like to say that Chris Middleton, out of any of the big twos that are available, isn't as good as any of the other stars that I mentioned.
No, I don't think that he's what 100% of what Giannis needs to back him up, especially, you know, being the face of the Bucks, being the one that they rely on. You need guys to back you up on the floor that can shoot and can take over maybe when you're on a bad streak or when you're getting double teamed like he will be
right.
by the Raptors, you know, and he doesn't have enough help. And I think similarly with the 76ers, now that Ben Simmons is out, you know, the Sixers already haven't been doing well, and then they're just honestly going to rely on Embiid.
Oh, that's a story for another day. Embiid is just so unreliable. You don't know what Embiid you're getting game to game.
Exactly.
And
And
so with the Bucks situation, I mean, I picked Toronto and Milwaukee as my Eastern Conference final. And that series is a toss-up for me. Did you pick the Bucks to make it to your Eastern Conference final?
I honestly, you know, Kemba Walker has really been struggling with his knee and everything. I picked definitely the Raptors in the Eastern Conference Finals. I honestly think that the Celtics might have a little more grit, a little more help behind them to get themselves to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, I mean, Boston. I think they go as Tatum and Jalen go. I hope that Kemba can figure out what's going on with his knee. I was looking forward to seeing like a healthy Kemba with Jason Tatum that has been that would be taking that next step like he was before the NBA shutdown, and then a Jaylen Brown who's averaged 20 points per game. They have a really deep team. I mean, they have a all defensive player coming off the bench in Marcus Smart. They have Gordon Hayward, who is slowly coming back after that gruesome ankle injury 2 years ago. And so I can't fault you for that Celtics pick, because when you look at what their team feels more complete than a Bucks team does.
I agree.
When you look at the pieces that they have, it's just the Bucks have had Giannis for the entire season, and Giannis has been the best player in the league the entire season. An interesting storyline that was talked about when discussing Toronto recently that I picked up on was this idea that did we overrate Kawhi Leonard's playoff run last season with how good Toronto still is? Many people thought Toronto would fall off a cliff without Kawhi because they're like, oh, Kawhi did it by himself. Kawhi had no help. And then people are shocked to find out just how good Kyle Lowry and Pascal Siakam are. So do you think, in your opinion, that we overrated how good Kawhi Leonard's playoff run was?
I think that it's the fact that a lot of people just underrated the team that he had behind him. People clown Kyle Lowry, and then Van Fleet in last year's playoff run. He was insane. Like when you asked me to play fantasy this year, Van Fleet was definitely one of the top in my list to pick for my team. Mm-hmm. And he did really, 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 really well at the beginning. I had to drop him at one point because I wasn't seeing what I wanted to.
Tough GM decision.
Exactly. I think that it's not as much a matter of Kawhi being overrated as the rest of his team just being underrated.
Right. And we've seen that a lot since Toronto is a Canadian media market. American media markets tend to underrate anything that's foreign. And the foreign influence on that team, I think, and the fact that a lot of Toronto's games aren't nationally televised in America. You have to have NBA League Pass to watch them oftentimes. But that's how Kyle Lowry has gone under the radar all season. That's how, Pascal Siakam has gone under the radar all season. How Fred VanVleet went under the radar all season, last season, and then this season, even after his playoff run, he's been a really good guy off the bench. How Norman Powell has gone under the radar, OG Anunoby. Marc Gasol, when he's played and been healthy, it's made Toronto a completely different team. And, funny story, I got into a debate with a couple friends of mine last week over the idea that if I'm trying to win a championship, I'd rather have, at this point for this season, I'd rather have Kyle Lowry over Trae Young, right? And that is a typical, American media market. They hype up Trae Young, and Trae Young is he has great offensive talents, right? He's a great offensive player, but his team also won like 20 games while Kyle Lowry's team is a second in the East. And they're like, well, Trae Young's team, he doesn't have as much help as Kyle Lowry. And I'm like, I think Kyle Lowry's a better winner because Kyle Lowry's a better defender. Kyle Lowry's a better leader. And the fact that Trae Young did have John Collins for a good portion of this season, they traded for Clint Capella at the trade deadline. He has Herter. Trae Young has some good pieces. And you have to also look at what Luka has done in the same amount of time that Trae Young has done. And it shows what's a winning player versus what's somebody that's going to lead the league in scoring and lose in the second round for most of his career. Luka is a winning basketball player. He still has some flaws in his game that he has to work out that will come with time. But Trae Young is going to be that guy that can average 30, but you wonder why his teams are always like a 5 seed or a 6 seed. And it's because he's a guy that averages 30, that takes 30 shots a game. And it's the same, me being a Thunder fan, I feel like I can say this. It's the same symptom of Russell Westbrook, where Russell Westbrook is an amazing offensive talent, an amazing leader, but he isn't an amazing winner when it comes down to it. He can get you 30 points and 15 assists, yes, but what goes unnoticed are the mental lapses and the bad decision making that causes you to lose games. Versus when I look at Kyle Lowry, I see Kyle Lowry, and he's one of these basketball players that I watch and I'm like, this guy makes the right decision almost every single time down. And so his numbers, he may not be averaging 30 and 10, but his 19 and 7 are more impactful than Trae Young's 29 and 10. And their record shows for it. And I think that the underrating of how good Toronto's team was with Kawhi last year kind of they undersold the team to elevate Kawhi when in fact you could do both. You could say Kawhi was great in that playoff run, but also that team is amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with you.
And so it was an interesting conversation that we had because they were just convinced that Trae Young is the better player, and I'm like, Trae Young may have the more potential. You know, Trae Young is a better offensive shooter. But when it comes down to winning, I'd rather have Kyle Lowry over Trae Young for this season.
I agree.
Maybe in the long term that changes. Trae Young has a lot of career left in him. I hope that he figures it out. But the fact that Luka in the same amount of time has Dallas in the playoffs while Atlanta is watching the bubble from home should say something. Anywho, let me hop off my Kyle Lowry, Trae Young thing for a second to talk about my favorite team in the NBA, the Oklahoma City Thunder. We have a big game today against the dead-on-arrival Grizzlies, who have not won a single game in the bubble. We're on NBA TV. It's Friday, August 7th when we're recording this. You'll probably be listening to this either during the game or after the game. But right now, the Thunder play at 3 Central Time. What do you make of this Chris Paul, Ja Morant matchup that's going to happen today?
It's just kind of hard to say because Ja Morant was a freak athlete. He still is, and it's just been different in the bubble. Mm-hmm. And it's just, generally speaking, it's just been wild to see how different players have played inside of the bubble and how much worse or better they've been playing because of the different environment. Mm-hmm. I think that, Ja Morant being as young and as stealthy as he is, I think that Chris Paul, with all of his experience, is really going to be able to hold him down. Mm-hmm. And my pick for this game is definitely OKC. The Grizzlies now without Jackson Jr.
That's going to be tough. He's their second best player, and him being out, there's a fast track for the Grizzlies being 0-8 in this entire bubble thing and missing the playoffs when, they started with almost every advantage possible short of the easiest schedule.
Yeah, and inside the bubble, Ja's only been averaging like 36%.
He's struggled, man.
Maybe 10 or a little less than 10 from 3. And then their best wing, Dylan Brooks, who showed some signs of a lot of improvement this season. That game that we went to, the Memphis game that we went to, we were both really impressed by him. We were like, who's this? Like, and he's also been shooting 36 as their best wing, and they've just taken a huge hit now with, again, Jackson Jr. gone, and they just haven't been able to find any rhythm inside of the bubble.
I wonder what Memphis's future holds. I talked to Evan, a Grizzlies fan, earlier this week, and he and I both said that the Grizzlies feel that they're one piece away. They're one. They need that. I don't know if John Morant is going to be your best player on a championship level team, but they need that secondary piece or a primary piece that's going to be that championship level superstar. I don't know if Jaren Jackson Jr. can be that or develop to become that. John Morant has struggled in meaningful games, and I don't think that's a fluke. We've seen a lot of these younger teams struggle in games that have actual meaning, these 8 seeding games. A team that's been contrary to that has been the Phoenix Suns. I don't know what got into Devin Booker and company, but they're undefeated in the bubble. The Phoenix Suns Twitter is one of the best follows on Twitter. The last night they were Nuggets fans, and I say that with quotations around it because they needed the Nuggets to beat the Trailblazers, but Damian Lillard had other plans. But the Phoenix Suns have been one of the most fascinating teams for me because it's like watching Devin Booker finally grow up before our eyes. I've been hard on Devin Booker. I've almost been out on him at times. He felt like a guy that puts up meaningless points on a losing team for so long, and it's looking like he's finally figured out how to win. He's starting to pass the ball more. He's starting to trust his team. He's averaging 6 assists per game and 26 points per game. I mean, this guy has been ridiculous, especially in the bubble. He's had game winners. He's put the Suns in a position where they might sneak in and get a play-in game if Portland can drop a couple. And seeing that has been amazing, in my opinion. I think the Suns, they had a decent team. This has been one of their better teams they've had in the past half decade. Ricky Rubio is a big reason for that. But I've marveled at the play of Devin Booker.
I agree. I think that he, as of right now, is the best player that we've seen inside the bubble. I saw a post and it said this is his first 4-game streak of his career. The
win streak?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so I really don't see – if I was him, I would not let that go. I would keep building on that. I would do anything that it took to do that because, I mean, he's been in the league for, a few years now, and to finally be gaining momentum in the league. I'm looking at the schedule now. They play the Heat next, who is kind of wishy-washy. You never know what you're going to get from the Heat.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's looking recently, exactly what you're going to get from the Suns, which is to win. I really think that the Suns, if they keep up this momentum, they have a good chance. The Grizzlies will probably lose tonight. They need to win like 50% of their games to stay comfortably as, maybe being the 8th seed. The Trailblazers, I think they need to win about 60% of their games. But I really do hope that the Suns keep on their streak because that would just be one of the most amazing stories of the bubble. Because they came in at
everybody
13.
thought they were just done. They thought they were done. And they've proved everybody wrong. I mean, I've written about it on the Daily Thunder. I wrote about the Suns being dead on arrival in one of those doormat teams, and now they're making me look like a clown. And so it's definitely been interesting. It's been fun chatting with you, Julieann. We got to do this more often. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love talking basketball with you. Please have me on anytime. This has definitely been so fun.
Do you have anything you want to shout out? Anything you want to plug?
Not really.
All right. Thank you again for joining us today, and hopefully we could do this again real soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
There you have it. Another breakdown of the life in the NBA bubble. As always, I want to thank you guys for listening. You guys are the reason that I do this every single day. Your support matters to me. So as always, make sure to subscribe on any platform you're listening to, rate the podcast. And if you like the work that I do, all I ask for you is to share it. Share it with other people that may like sports, other people that may not like sports, other people that just like listening to stuff in the background is white noise. Thank you again for the support. It matters the world to me. I was checking my statistics the other day, and I have a few listeners in Thailand. So shout out to them, whoever they are. Make sure you guys send me a DM or whatever. I'd love to hear from you. As always, may the rest of your day be the best of your day. Cheers.